in changing careers, that was, that was a really big thing for me. It was a real blow to my self-esteem, my self-worth, my sense of my own value when I wasn't immediately successful. Because at any time previously in my life, if I started a new endeavor, generally I was right off the bat really successful. And, in my most recent switch or shift, that wasn't the case. There was a huge learning curve. And so there was a lot of anxiety and stress around who am I? Am I capable? Am I credible? Am I good enough?
Yeah, this is so interesting. I've been working on this. Like, I'm so glad you're talking about this, Allison. Like, so I've been clearing some stuff with my own drama, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm astounded by, and this is from the get-go of our conversation today. We talked about how like you identify with what you do, right? What you do is so
Yes.
wrapped up into who you are, and whether that's healthy or not, like it is a lot of what it is, right? So it's so funny how something I never thought would ever happen, like once you become something, like once you start like a new job, a new career, a shift in even the way you interact with your relationship, right? Then there's this like ripple effect of not knowing who you are anymore, right? Because you're in a completely different set of circumstances. Do
Yeah.
you think that stops people from taking risks?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think here's my theory on risk and change and why people don't make risks or take risks and why they don't change, even if it's something that they really want. I think there are three reasons when people actually do, right? One, they're afraid they're going to die. Two, they're afraid they're going to lose something that's really important to them, or they have lost something. And then three, they finally get to that point where living in the way they're living is no longer sustainable, meaning that taking the risk is more attractive than staying in the current or the present situation. And I really believe those are the three reasons. I'm sure there are more,
No,
but the three main that actually get people to step into that uncertainty and discomfort of risk and change.
it's so interesting. But it's a great perspective because, like, do you ever read the Four Agreements?
Yes.
Right? So he talks about like people that are in abusive relationships. They're in that abusive relationship for as long as, and I'm paraphrasing like crazy, but for as long as that person that they're with abuses them a little bit, was it like a little bit less than they abuse themselves? And then
Yeah.
when that switches, then they go, I'm done. Right. And I think that's like, if we look at it from a career perspective, from a job perspective, it's like,
Oh
okay,
my gosh.
does that
Yeah. I mean,
resonate?
that resonates so much in terms of what finally got me to leave my marriage, which is, and my former husband wasn't abusive physically, not so much emotionally, but I allowed myself to lose myself over time. And once I started taking care of myself in a way that really nourished me, took a long time to learn, what it was that was missing and what I needed to give myself. But once I did that, there was no, it was done.
Okay, boom. Are you ready? Are you ready for the hook? The hook. Here it is. So that blows my mind because I'm sorry I'm yelling. But that, because to me, man, like meeting you, Allison, like I don't. We met like a few months. We met in February, I think, or early March, and it's like,
Yep.
oh my God, like you are just someone that, like, to me, I'm like, you're so confident, like you are so who you are. So you're saying that wasn't always the case. Can you walk me through the whole story? Like, how do we get to here where you're like such a badass? You know what I mean? You're such a badass. Like,
Oh my
walk
gosh.
me through the ingredients.
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but as a
Wherever it's most dramatic.
that's funny because I heard that over and over as a kid. Don't be so dramatic. As if being dramatic was a real negative. So thank you for that permission there. Here's something that I'll say. When I was a kid, I was always known for being really outgoing and funny and engaging, and teachers love me, adults, that I was precocious. And I think that, as a young kid, I was really comfortable in my skin. And then at some point, there starts to be this shift. And it happens, I think, for a lot of teenagers, definitely for a lot of females, that you start to look upon yourself with that third party gaze. And, there was not as much self-confidence. I questioned myself. While I had my friend groups and I was popular, I always still felt a little bit like I was on the fringe internally. So I think, some struggling as I got a little bit older with I'm not good enough kind of thing, right? Which is so common for so many people. The perception of me from the outside, was very different from how I felt on the inside. So people really always consistently thought that I had it together. I was so confident, just, really out there. And on the inside, I didn't feel that way. I felt almost like a phony, or like it was a facade. People saw me in a certain way. And if they ever found out the truth, I'd be really exposed.
Because it was too easy, like because that the exterior was too easy to create, or like what was the source for the I'm not good enough? That's what I'm so fascinated with, because it's astounding to me how I meet so many people, and it's like it all, like their history goes back to, and then like I did this, but you go back in time, and then it's like, and it all starts from I wasn't fucking good enough, and it's like,
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think a big part of that has to do with parenting and how we are parented. And I don't want to throw my mother under the bus here in any way, shape, or form. But I think when we're questioned as children about the way that we express ourselves, or we're told at times, don't express yourself in that way, it shifts who we believe we are. And if we are consistently put in that place that we have to justify our actions or answer questions about what we're doing, who we are, in situations where it really doesn't matter, right? I think over time, we just learn at this sort of cellular level that I can't just be, right? There's a gaze on me. And it's just so interesting because I don't know if I did this intuitively or if it was subconscious, but when I had my own children, and my daughter was very unique, but I tried to step out of my own discomfort about how I would be viewed by how she expressed herself. So my thought was, it's so difficult in the outside world. We're judged and assessed all the time. So in our home, anything goes, right? Express yourself as you are, not who I want you to be because it's more comfortable for me. So, I think that's sometimes where it comes from, is just being questioned about who we are from a very young age, or asked to do something different than we're doing in the clothing we choose to wear, in, the hobbies that we feel passionate about.
See, this is really cool to hear you talk about the, I mean, it sucks, that you had to deal with that, and so many kids do. I catch myself. My daughter has a big voice, and I'm very jealous
Yeah.
of it. It's like she's just like she'll just start screaming loud for like at breakfast, and she'll just start making these noises, and it pierces my ears. And I have sensory issues and all these great things. And I'm like, and I catch myself, like not like I catch myself stop, like I stop myself from going, shh, shh, shh.
Yeah.
Because that like what I say to her is I go, man, you have a big voice. Daddy doesn't need ears. And then she'll say something and I'll go, what? Sorry? Like pretending like I'm deaf already, you know? So I'm busting balls, but like but the thing I don't want to attack is the actual power of the voice, because she needs that voice, you know, especially as a powerful woman, like she needs it, right? I love the way it excites me about this discussion so far is I don't know if you had a thread where like you're saying, like expression was taken away and it was limited, squelched, maybe, and then like to boot underneath it was this notion of I'm not good enough. But was there did you have a thread where you were like a drive where you're like, my goal in life is to be expressed and heard? Because now you're a listening expert, right?
Yes.
So I was like, this is phenomenal. Like, how do you get from there from that issue to being an expert in breaking down how others communicate? I mean, like, again, like when I met with you and you're like, you broke down how I process, it was phenomenal. Like, you just got me. I was like, she gets me. No?
It was actually never on my radar, really, about how I express myself or wanting to have a bigger voice ever. It just wasn't something that was conscious for me. I think for so many years, I just sort of traveled on the wave that I was on and found myself in, different roles or different careers based on timing and circumstance. And so there was never anything in me that said, I really want to go deeply into communication and how humans interact and how human relationships form and degrade. That was never an intentional direction that I was going in.
Because you didn't know that was a possibility, or it didn't call you at the time?
Well, it's interesting because I was really miserable in my career for many years. I was in mortgage lending, and I was, look at your face. And I kind of fell into that also. That's another story. But I was very successful, and it was very lucrative. And I came to it from the perspective of educating people, and with this very high level of integrity. And I just built this sphere without having to do any marketing, and just was very successful very quickly. And after several years, as the industry started shifting, there was so much fear in the industry and so little common sense at times. And I was always able to help people, but it was just such a struggle, and it just didn't make sense. And I was exhausted, and it felt like my soul was being sucked out of me. I had no passion. And the stress of it got to the point, and this is where we talk about, the reasons that people change. The stress got to the point where I did not like who I was when I was with my kids, when I was on vacation, just in my skin, I was uncomfortable because I professed certain values, but I really wasn't living them. I professed that my kids are the most important thing to me, but I was so stressed here constantly that when I was with them, I wasn't present. right? I worked from home, but I was always somewhere else in my head. You know, if we would be playing Legos, I would still be thinking about all the other stuff that I needed to do that and truthfully, I would rather be doing than playing Legos because I was so stressed about it. And I thought about, I really wanted to shift. I really want to get out of this business, but I had so much fear around, I'm not credible to do anything else.
I was going to say, where's the I'm not good enough meter at this point?
Right. On paper, I don't look like I'm capable of doing anything. I have a background in, kinesiology and fitness and health club management. And then I, fall into mortgage lending, and I have all these great relationships with people. They love me. They think I'm competent, but who's going to hire me to do anything else? And I don't even know what I want to do. I have so little passion for anything at this point. But at the same time, I knew that I just couldn't keep doing what I was doing. The writing was on the wall.
And you're married? You're married at this point?
Still married at this point. But I had this several aha moments in a row. I had the awareness of how stressed I was. And I thought, this is going to give me cancer, which is my greatest fear. I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac. I came to it. I think there's a familial, maybe a genetic component to that. But I thought, if I stay doing what I'm doing, I'm going to get sick. And then my other aha was, I've got this awareness right now. And if I don't do something, and 5 years from now, I'm still doing what I'm doing, what an idiot, right? Like, I've missed all this time with my kids for what? So there was a lot of fear keeping me in what I was doing until I had fear that was bigger, that said, you have to change, given, what the writing is on the wall.
So, and what did you think would happen on the other side of that fear?
Did not even consider it. Now I get it. Like, fear is beautiful. Paralyzing fear is such a gift, because it tells us exactly what we need to do. And that's a funny thing that you just mentioned that, Ron, because there were a couple things that really pushed me over the edge to making a shift into this uncertainty and making less money than I did, when I graduated college, kind of thing. So,
and not being as skilled, right? That's right? The biggest punch to the nuts, probably. You're like, I'm doing something new and I'm not proficient like I want to be.
Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes our greatest lessons come from places that we never would have anticipated. My daughter, when she was young, was an ice hockey player. And so we would host these ice hockey coaches from summer camps at our home. And we had this barbecue with several ice hockey coaches who were kids. They were 19 to 21 years old in college, and this was their summer job. And this one kid, super cool, was telling me about this book that he had read called The War of Art. And it's about overcoming procrastination and using creativity. And those weren't really issues for me. I'm not a procrastinator. I'm almost the opposite. But there was something about the book that he mentioned that I thought I'm going to read this book. And now I don't even remember what it was that he mentioned. But I got this book on Amazon, and most of it didn't resonate, but I got to one page, and it was about fear and resistance. And it said, the root of all resistance is fear. So when you're paralyzed by fear, it means it's an endeavor you have to undertake for the growth of your soul. And I read that, and it was liberating for me. It was, when you are paralyzed by fear, it means it's something you have to do.
I mean, I don't mean to mansplain, but that's just ridiculous. My fear, okay, I mean, that's just asinine. My fear gets me to really believe that I don't actually want to do the thing. So, and then I obsess over it for years. So, if I actually did the thing, I probably wouldn't be afraid anymore. But the point is that.
Yes, that's exactly.
I'm kidding, obviously. Yeah, I mean, but that's what it feels like, right? It fear stops you, and you go, no, you don't want that. You don't want that. It's too scary, right?
I mean, I used that several times before I even quit my job. Surfing in Costa Rica, trying to catch a green wave, a wave that hasn't broken yet, not being a surfer, kind of understanding the power of the ocean and feeling paralyzed when the instructor said, okay, we've just got to turtle under these waves, and then we got to, get out there past them. And I was truly physically almost shut down, almost paralyzed. And I just said, okay, this is exactly what I need to do if I really want to grow, right? It's for the growth of my soul. And I just, took a deep breath and, okay, here we go. And I rode a green wave, which was the coolest thing. So my thing is, when we are terrified and we use that fear to sort of propel ourselves forward, when we get to the other side and we realize we're okay, there is such a gratitude for that fear, right? And just this, I don't even know how to articulate it, but this feeling of, I am so accomplished because I did that thing that I really was so terrified to do.
I was going to say accomplished. Yeah. So, it's funny. I talk a lot with clients about, or especially this past week, it's been about something that's come up is people trying to be more themselves. Right. And so this is where there's a tricky slope here where it's like you said, it's not just we associate who we are based on what we do. Right. But this is a clear situation where an accomplishment, an achievement, working through a huge hurdle does define us. It does define our characteristic, right? So if you spend most of your childhood, and tell me, I'm just kind of reframing this, and if you spend most of your childhood being directed in a way that is counter to your intuition, which if we go your intuition, the manifestation of your intuition could be a rough sketch of yourself, right? So you're talking, no, don't do that. No, put that down. Don't go here. No, we don't do that.
Be careful.
Be careful. Don't take a risk. Be careful, right? That you could get hurt. Because I'm a parent. I don't want you to be hurt. I'm going to tell my child this flat out. This is my shit. This is my journey. I don't want to see you get hurt because I'm super protective and I empathize with you. That's on me. You do you. Right? But so we're redirected our whole childhood, and then our adult, as we get into our 20s, we're trying to figure our shit out. Like you said, you did kinesiology, you did personal fitness, and it doesn't seem like your heart was in it. So it seemed like that was a choice made on everything that was conceptually safe or the way you were redirected, right? So now you're even further away. Then you're up against it. You fell into all these things. You're up against it. And so your whole action, your whole vocabulary of action is completely devoid of self at that point. Not completely, but very much so you don't know how to identify yourself. Then you're starting to then you're starting to really tackle fear, right? So you're doing little things, and then you're seeing what you're made of. You're like, oh, I can do the wave, and I can get past it. So what is the made of? Can you define for me, what is that, like, what you saw on the other side of the wave that came up for you? You're like, oh, I'm a what? I'm a this person. I'm this level of good enough.
Well,
Like,
in
what comes
that
up?
moment, I was like, that is so badass that I just did that. Who saw that? Right? But here's what I believe. Confidence begets more confidence. So we have to have a few successes under our belt in order to take even more risk, is what I believe. So we have to be willing to step into some fear initially and have a positive outcome. And a positive outcome doesn't necessarily mean that everything went totally smoothly. A positive outcome for me, in my opinion, means I learned something that takes me to that next step or that next place. Or simply, I was terrified, I did it anyway, and the outcome doesn't really matter ultimately because I was so scared and I did it anyway.
So, oh my God, as you said that, so it's like, based on what you just said to me, what came up, tell me if I'm on the right track here. So then articulating self is really how free you are with expression, not with the outcome of the achievement or the doing, right? It's not the action, it's the expression. So if I'm a shitty singer, let's say, I mean, not that far off. But like, I'm decent. I've been told I'm okay, you know. But if I sing and I love singing and I'm not like Pavarotti, right? But like then I'm a singer. Then it's like I'm not identifying with the action or the quality of the outcome or the achievement, but I love expressing myself. So I singing is a part of myself. If I'm not singing, I'm not my full self. If I'm a director,
absolutely. I mean, I think that's it. If you're terrified to sing in front of other people, you step up onto that stage and you open up and you sing, that is like wildly successful outcome, in my opinion, because you got up there. You know, it's Brene Brown. You know, the man that steps into the arena, right, is the victor, not just, and I'm paraphrasing, but you have to step in, right? And that's where we have to hold huge respect and esteem for people, is if they step into that, put themselves out there, risk, be so vulnerable, not knowing what the outcome could be, right? Vulnerability and uncertainty is just this beautiful thing, but I think it comes from when we're willing to be terrified and we do it anyway.
With the goal being expression, right? Like I love this, dude. I'm like, my head is spinning right now because I've been trying to articulate this for people for a while now, and it's like this just clicked what you said, where it's like with that beautiful example of the surfing, it's the idea of the expression, right? Yes, like someone else might think you're bad at surfing or something, but the idea is like, I'm a surfer now. I am, which is a very confident statement. I am. Now you have confidence. You did it. So you expressed it, and the expression was met with whatever outcome, but the expression existed. The expression came to life. And I think that some people let fear stop them from the expression because they think the outcome won't be 100% A plus. Like you said, like, you're in a new job. What if I'm not good at it? What if I suck at it? What if I don't like at it? What if I don't like it? Not at it.
Yeah.
What if I don't like it, right? Well, it doesn't matter. You're expressing yourself in this new role. That's a success. I never thought of it. Heaven forbid that be taught to me, but I never thought of it that way. It's the expression.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of us, we hold back because our first thought is, what if I fail? And so my shift was not, what if I fail, but how good will it feel to be terrified and then be okay on the other side? So that I try and silence that voice of, what if I fail, and replace it with, well, what if I make it? Right?
Yeah, like it's funny when I was starting off later in life as a performer, like so I started off as a director actually, like right out of high school. I started assisting directors and I couldn't coordinate all this greatness, just kidding, all this mess at the time. I just couldn't coordinate it to act or to perform or to sing. I literally, because of sensory issues and ADD and self-confidence, I literally couldn't sing until I was 30.
Yep.
And so in my early 20s, I was a director, and I was able to make it happen because there's power there in getting people excited and inspiring people and coaching people. So I became a theater director very early on. And it wasn't until later that I was able to start switching the paradigm and started like getting myself on stage. And it came through teaching. I was actually teaching. People were like, "You're funny." So I started creating shows in my 30s when I was teaching a lot. And it was miserable. I hated it. It was so, because I wasn't good at it and I wanted to be good at it. And my then wife, she was like, "You're like, this is painful. I can't be part of this anymore. Like, I can't watch you do these shows when you come home and you're angry, And
Yeah.
I used to dip like crazy. And my advice to myself, if I go back in time, is just go find one thing to, because that's when it started clicking in 2013, 2014. It started clicking, and I started going, okay, what's one thing that I can enjoy tonight? What's
Yeah.
one thing that I can feel like I'm expressing well? I didn't think about it in those terms of expression, right? So for you, then, you alluded to, so you made a career shift. When did you start enjoying it? Even though you weren't brilliant at it, when did you start enjoying living in the expression of it?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a bigger question that I have to go back a little bit
do
for.
it. Do it too.
Okay. So it's funny because I remember I had the picture in my mind of where I was, on my front porch, talking on the phone to a good friend, talking about how miserable I was, talking about how I wanted to make a career shift. What am I going to do? No one's going to hire me. And she asked me the question about my purpose, right? What do I want to be doing? Not what job do I want, not what role do I want inside of an organization, but what are the things that I want to be doing that fulfill my purpose, right? What's the impact I want to make on the world? And as I sat there on my front porch chair, I said, I want to make people's lives better. I just want our interaction, I want them to leave feeling better about their life and their, what they can bring to it. Um, so I started speaking it to the universe. And I know this sounds so boulder woo woo, but I really do believe once you get clear and you are able to express it, then, the universe says, oh, okay, well, here you go. I didn't know what you wanted. So, but now I do. So here it is. So it's very interesting because I, um, I had this sort of pivotal spiritual moment almost that allowed me to really make that shift and take that risk and that jump. I went to an event with a friend. It was in Boulder. And she had said to me, she had started her own business about a year earlier, consulting business in corporate communication. And she said to me, I'm at the point now where I really need to hire someone. It would be very part-time. It pays next to nothing. But man, I would love for it to be you. And I said, well, how much are we talking? And, she told me, and I laughed and I was like, yeah, you're right. It could never be me. Because she had said, I'd love for it to be you, but, I know you'd never do it because of the money. And I laughed and scoffed and was like, yeah, I wish. And then I was driving down Arapahoe heading east. And I know exactly where I was. I can picture myself in my car. And I thought of that book, The War of Art, and those 2 pages that resonated, and that if you're paralyzed by fear, It's an endeavor you have to undertake for the growth of your soul. And in that moment, I actually started crying and thought, this is what I want for my career, or this is the direction that I want to go. And the only thing that's holding me back is my fear about money. And I just had this moment right there. I'm going to quit my job. And I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna grow, and I'm gonna, this is where I want to go in the direction of my career. So
what's happening in your eyes right now? There's like a swell of passion there. That
is that it? Yeah. I mean, it just, it's funny, when you have those moments, so often it becomes almost a photograph in your mind that you go back to over and over again. And I have a few of those. One was sitting on my front porch. The other was driving east on Arapahoe. And I'm sure there's more that will come up. But yeah, I drove home and I told my husband at the time, I said, I'm quitting my job. And we had some conversation around that. And I think he was worried about it. We had a certain lifestyle. But I was willing. It was that moment that we talked about before of why people change, right? I feared I was going to die. I thought I might get cancer. I was afraid of losing something important to me, that time and that relationship with my kids. The risk seemed, more attractive than staying in the situation that I was in and losing myself, just because I was afraid to move in the direction of what I wanted. So it just was this beautiful, perfect storm that all came together. You asked me about not being successful and what that was like. It was horrible. It sucked. I hated it. It was a learning curve to get really competent and become an expert in what I do. I had to study. I wasn't able to articulate what our company did for a long time. So having a background in sales and being so accomplished, I was not able to translate that into this new role right away. I would say it took a solid 15 months to start to see some successes, because there was so much sort of academic learning that I had to do to be able to articulate very naturally, almost viscerally, about some of the concepts in listening and corporate communication. And so it was really hard. There were probably 3 times that I thought to myself, I need to go get a real job, because I thought I was failing.
I love that, like we're taught growing up that there's this like cushion that we're like doing the world a favor if we go get a real job. Like
Yeah.
there's like it's like this like fake safety net that we think exists, but like when in reality, like I tried getting a real job with the majority of my career. And like literally nothing. Like no, like now every so often like people are interested, and they might go, "Oh, you'd be great in this," or whatever, and I'm like, "Yeah." Like I don't know anymore. But like it's funny that like that notion of I'll go get a real job versus my passion.
It's funny because I came from that, and I was so successful, and I was very good at what I did, but it wasn't really aligned with the impact I wanted to make on the world, I
But isn't that
think,
funny? Isn't that funny how, sorry to cut you off, but like, isn't that funny how you could be so successful in something when the drive is I'm not good enough, right? So I'm not good enough for this thing that I really, like you said, the minute the opportunity hits you and you go, oh my God, this is where I want my career to go. That was the first time I heard you say want, right?
yeah.
But when in mortgage, which is so far from kinesiology, like it's so funny that in mortgage lending you could be like so successful because you're not good enough at anything else, but you go, well, this piece of shit thing, or like, not that that's piece of shit, I'm sure there's people passionate about it, but like this thing that I don't care as much about, I'm not good enough, so I can just go be successful here because it's safe.
You want to hear something really,
I
really
do.
funny?
I love funny.
Is that, I was always, the number one producer, sometimes the number two producer in our company every month. And when people asked me what I did for work, I never wanted to tell them that I was in mortgage lending. I had some kind of judgment around it based on sort of that stigma that we hold culturally towards car salespeople and mortgage brokers. And while that wasn't me and how I approached it, I approached it always from the perspective of, can I help? Can I serve? But I still had a discomfort sharing with people what I did. And it just, I remember that so, so viscerally, not wanting to share what I did despite being so successful.
Isn't that funny? Again, so okay, so if we're watching the movie of your life right now, right? And I love this movie so far because it really resonates with me. It's the journey of someone who goes, I'm not good enough at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, right? And how that how that pushes her to the brink where she can't handle it anymore. And she goes, you know what? Regardless of if I'm good enough or not, it doesn't matter anymore. Like I need to do something better, right? Then you put yourself
Yeah.
in a situation where you're less than, you're learning to do. At what point in the movie, or in the reality of your life, at what point did you start feeling that, like, I am good enough? Because again, you now, I'm telling you, like, I have a feeling you're pretty confident. Like, on many levels.
I feel like I'm good enough now.
Yeah. So how did you get there? That's the final act. What was the big battle? The fighting the dragon, slaying the dragon. Like, how did you do it? What was it? Break it down.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, there's one other piece. The not good enough had me step into getting married feeling like I'm finally good enough, right? I'm finally good enough because this person wants to be with me. And so this might be my only chance. I truly thought that. Like, I think this guy is really great and he's so confident and he wants me. So I got married and we were the perfect dynamic of dysfunction for one another, right? His confidence and assertiveness and at times aggressiveness was perfect for me to not speak up, not to push back, to over time lose my voice. So I quit my job and left my marriage within a 2-month period. Just saying.
When it rains.
But it was becoming more confident that allowed me to do that. And having a sense of being more aligned with my core values that allowed me to do that. So in my new career, while I wasn't very successful in terms of production yet, I was more aligned with the purpose that I knew that I wanted to fulfill. So there was some confidence that came from that. the more I studied about communication and vulnerability in communication, trust in communication, I realized that there were certain things that were, such critically important elements of a trusting relationship that I didn't have and would not be able to cultivate in my current relationship. And, over the course of our marriage, we had been in and out of counseling 6 different times without a real positive impact or any. And I just, was living in this, I've made my bed, I have to lie in it, until I had this awareness of myself that I was holding myself back in communication because, once again, fear and not feeling like I deserved more. And so when we talk about that confidence begets confidence, as I started to have some more successes in communication, I realized, outside of my marriage, successes in communication, I realized, wow, I actually am, I am a communicator. This is not entirely, I don't want this dynamic anymore. And had the courage to do something different.
Oh, that's cool as hell. Because then it supports this thing of like, then it makes sense why I see you so successful now, because you are in your full expression in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
As a communicator, you're remarried in a great relationship, right?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. So that works. That's awesome. You are in a position right now in life where you are still coaching, training, consulting on communication. So you're fully I'm sure there's always room to grow and everything, but like it's really cool how you charted that progression, how that journey. And it's funny that when you said, like, a lot of movies make it look like Rocky, one of my favorite movies ever, right? That first movie is so sincere. He's working through his fear, he's making it happen, and then boom, he wins big. And you think, this is what I love about the Rocky movies. You think that that's it. He's done. They wrote it that way. Where the last, they were like, everything after this win, or he doesn't win in the first movie, but after that experience that he goes the distance, he gets what he wants. Everything goes downhill, and he gets more and more successful for the next couple of movies. But at the core of it, his fear stops him every time. So it's like, we're never done fighting the fear, right? And I loved how you articulated that as well, where you're saying, like, it wasn't that you just made the shift and then all of a sudden it was millions of dollars and everything worked out.
Still not.
At this moment, in this moment, but there's this notion that you are a true hero and a true success because you found a way to express. And I think that, like, to express what you're passionate about, to express the way you see the world through communication, and again, having experienced you on the listening side, like, you really are excellent at that, at expressing how pieces coexist and fit together. So that's really cool. You're a badass.
Do you want to hear something super cliche?
No, I'm scared. Of course, yes.
So I think another big piece of my journey started by my brother exposing me to a TED Talk. So, and it was, and again, I mean, a cliche, Brene Brown. I was standing working in my office. I had, one monitor to my left, one to my right, and an email came in from my brother that said, I think you should watch this TED Talk, and nothing else in the email. So I watched the TED Talk, and it's Brene Brown talking about shame and vulnerability. And I was crying, just crying, feeling like finally, after a million years of therapy and, not really getting to the root of it, I'm watching this 18-minute TED Talk, and she's describing completely my experience. So I watched it again, cried again. I mean, right after, watched it a third time and took notes. Then bought her book, Daring Greatly. Then bought her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. So this was the start of my journey. It was about 2 years of starting to get a little bit stronger to then be able to step into some of the shifts, that I was resistant to because of that fear. So I give a lot of credit to her work in shame and vulnerability, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Oh my God, what she's done, and especially vulnerability, like, I mean, it just comes up in everything now, right? So let me ask you this. We're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because like, you came full circle. What like that, like, how can people work with you now? Like, how can people be impacted by your work in communication now? What's the best way to connect with you like that?
Yeah. So I have a website, Peak Impact Consulting Services.com. Find me on LinkedIn, Allison O'Brien. The work that I do with teams and with individuals in leadership development and management training is all through the lens of communication. Listening and speaking are communication, but the equation is 50-50, and most people spend a lot of time focusing on how to share information, but don't really even have this concept that the way that we process information really influences how we share it. So if we can gain greater awareness and greater agility in how we process information, then we'll know going into any situation, stepping into any communication interaction, do I need to shift? And how do I need to shift in order to have more value in this scenario? And I think that's just a big piece of it, right? How do I show up in my communication so that I can have more positive influence in business outcomes, which ultimately affect profitability, engagement, multiple different factors. So
See, that's super cool. If you're watching this at home, like, what's super cool is to see your face and your eyes. You're like, thank you for being so vulnerable before and opening up about the journey and hardship. But it's really cool the minute you see someone being fully expressed right there, because you went, what it is it's this. Like, you fully stepped into your power. That was beautiful as hell to watch, and I hope people take you up on this. You know what I mean? Like, whether they're watching it now, June 23rd, 2020, or in 5 years. Like, that was really cool to see you being so sharp and effective. You definitely help people. Like, that's 100% right there. That's how it's done.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when, my dad always said to me, become an expert in what you love and you'll be successful. And what that just says to me, and he is someone who, I mean, I've never met anyone who's more passionate about their work than he is. He retired 3 years ago, but he still goes to work every day from 7:30 to 4. But, I think it's a beautiful thing to see people doing something that they're passionate about, whether it's playing a sport, an instrument, singing. There's something really amazing when you see someone doing something doing something well that clearly they love, right? And so I feel so fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, to be able to have the impact that I have, and to be, for the first time, well, it's been 8 years now, but for the first time in my career, so aligned with who I am and what I have to give. It's such a gift if we have that in our work.
Well, you're a gift.
You're a gift.
You're a gift. Thank
No,
you.
you are.
No, you are. All right. Thank you so much. This was awesome. Like, this was super cool. And like, oh my God, like we came up with some deep stuff up in here, about like how to
Yeah.
really articulate self. I have to call some people after this show and be like, hey, I figured out here's an easier way to do it.
Well, thank you for having me and for listening.
Oh my God, thank you for reaching out. Yeah, like you have a phenomenal story. And again, vulnerability, like you just experience it. So talking to you is just like always, it feels so comforting and soothing. I'm like, okay, she got my back.
I got you.
Yeah, I would. Thank you so much, Allison.
You bet.
Virtual hug.
Bye.